Okay, hi everyone, and welcome back to Intellectual Potluck. I am joined once again by my lovely sister Mel.
Hi.
But this time she's actually live and in person because her and her partner have been over visiting us for the last couple of weeks, and we thought we'd squeeze in some recording. Gonna go off exploring later, but gotta fit in the content.
Yeah, we're going home tomorrow, so literally it's squeezing it in.
I know. It's gone so quick though.
I know, I don't want to go back to sunny England.
Yeah, everyone's gonna comment that you've got a nice tan now though.
True. It just doesn't last. It doesn't last very long.
No, you can take my fake tan back with you if you want. Do a bit of a top up on the plane.
I've got fake tan. You think I don't have fake tan?
The Bondi Sands stuff is really good though.
Yeah.
I don't know if they sell that in England. It's
Yeah,
got
they
Bondi
do
in
sell
the
it
name.
in England, yeah.
Oh, let me know if my boobs come out.
Okay.
I know there's not much there, but my bra
It's like
just keeps doing
flashbacks to the beach.
this. I know.
Boob watch.
Yeah. A wave's coming quick. Are they in there?
I didn't expect everyone to be on boob watch though.
Yeah, you probably should have just put me on boob watch. Grant took boob watch very seriously.
Yes, he did.
And I don't mean that in a creepy way.
No,
We
not
make
at
him
all.
sound creepy. He's not. Genuinely, so one of my favorite stories about Grant is that one time we were running with a group of friends and he asked a couple of our friends about their sports bras, and it was from genuine concern because they have quite large boobs, and he was like, Sam wears sports bras but they're not having to work as hard, how do you do it? Do you have to wear two? And
No.
it was genuine concern. If anyone else had said it, it would have come across creepy, but it was Grant, so somehow it's okay.
The key with sports bras with big boobs is to get ones with the hook and eye, not just ones you pull over your head, because they very easily get stuck when you've got big boobs.
Oh.
I'm assuming you haven't had this issue.
I only have the ones that go over my head.
No, I've got stuck in them.
Sometimes I want more boobs, and then I hear stories like that and I change my mind. Anyway, so despite how we started, this episode is not about boobs.
No.
It could be, but it's not. So we're actually, we're deviating a bit from our usual unpopular opinions, and Mel and I wanted to chat about something that's a bit close to our hearts. So we want to be chatting about hidden disabilities today. So as a bit of an overview, because probably not everyone is as deeply entrenched in the disability space as we have been, a hidden disability is a disability that is not immediately apparent, so it's one that you can't necessarily physically see. So that includes things like mental health conditions, a physical disability that may not be immediately apparent, like blindness or deafness or hard of hearing, anything like that. There's so many. I will include some links in the episode descriptions to better descriptions than what I'm doing right now, but just having in mind, it's a disability that you may not be able to see. Mel, have I missed anything?
No, I think that the hidden disabilities that are more prevalent at the moment in popular media and stuff is neurodivergence.
Yes.
So neurodivergence is any kind of brains that are different. So you can autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. There's probably more that I'm missing. I'm actually a special needs coordinator in my real life.
Yeah, so you know all the words.
I should know all the words, but yeah, it's a very, very, very broad term.
Yeah, so it's pretty vast, and it's something that I feel like has become more and more prevalent in the modern day, which is something that I think is a great thing. So because we now have a greater understanding of people, we have a greater understanding of the brain, and as a society, we have developed a more understanding of not all disabilities are necessarily things that you can see. But I know that there's been a lot in Australia specifically. Mel can say if there's the same in the UK. But so in Australia, we have something called the NDIS, which is the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And that provides funding and support for people with disabilities all across the spectrum. But there's been a lot of negative press about them because there's definitely flaws in the system. And one of the things that has kind of come out a little bit is people's lack of understanding of hidden disabilities. A lot of, people assuming, oh, I can't see your disability, therefore, why would you need this funding? Or why do you have a blue badge when I can't see your disability? People don't understand what they can't see. And that's something that I just keep seeing. So I wanted to chat about it. I don't know if it's the same in the UK.
It's very similar. So to get funding in the UK, a lot of it is through like your education provider or through social services or through your health provider. And in the UK, a significant number of young people who have special educational needs have what's called an education, health and care plan. Now, I can go on about EHCPs till the cows come home because that's literally my job is implementing and monitoring the provision on EHCPs. I'm not going to go on about them now, but I think when then people become adults, there is a definite gap in getting provision and support. When I work with school leavers, parents and us as teachers are so worried about them going into adult services, not because children's service is particularly good, but because there is that gap. And I think that if we had something like the NDIS, okay.
Also, NCIS is a TV show.
No, but there is definitely a gap, and people really struggle to access the support they need, especially if they do have a hidden disability. So I work with fantastic autistic young people, but they're very extremely verbal, can make a lot of their needs and wishes known, yeah. But what you don't see is the struggle. There is a lot of masking going on.
And all the work that goes behind being able to get to that point where you're making making informed decisions and doing all of these things for yourself. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, and people tend to just see the end result where things are good.
I think less commonly now people go like, oh, well, you don't look autistic. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll look more autistic.
I wasn't aware autism had a facial feature. Yeah, I hear it a lot. And so a bit of my background, I don't currently work in this job. I have moved on, but I spent 5 years working in the disability services sector, both as a disability support worker and then a disability support team leader and facilitator. And then I went into the marketing team at the disability support company. And like I say, I have since moved on very, very recently. I think it's been maybe a month or two since I left. So still very front and center in my brain. But one thing so I worked with people who very often had physical disabilities as well, but very often hand in hand, there was also more layers of a hidden disability. So, I might work with someone who is in a wheelchair, but they also have an intellectual disability.
Yeah, and I think there's more, like, for a lot of physical disabilities, there's more physical aids. Someone's autistic or they've got an anxiety disorder or something like that. Yes, there is medication to treat the anxiety. And some people don't want to use medication. They don't want to be on medication or can't take medication for whatever reason.
Well, a lot of medications I've learned, let's say if you are trying to get pregnant, there are some mental health medications that you can't take while you're trying to do that. That's something I've learned recently. I'm not trying to get pregnant, for the record. But I didn't know that. And so someone could be struggling with their mental health because they've had to come off their medication for something else. And I feel like support for a hidden disability is just decades behind the support for physical disabilities. And support for physical disabilities could also be a hell of a lot better. I mentioned in my first ever episode with Grant, I mentioned the curb cut theory where, a cut in the curb, it benefits people with a physical disability because, it helps them to get up onto the curb, but it also has a knock-on effect for other people. This idea we're still trying to get it out there more. There are still a lot of things that people need to do to support physical disabilities, but we've also understood and known about physical disabilities for so much longer, whereas a lot of hidden disabilities, we may have known about them, but they were definitely underdiagnosed and undertreated, and the support wasn't there a lot of the time. So in the last decade or so, there's a lot of work gone into figuring out what support for people with hidden disabilities would look like and trying to put that into place, whereas those conversations did happen a while ago for physical disabilities. So we're behind.
I think people don't understand disability anyway, but I think people really can struggle to understand with with hidden disabilities. What really brought it home to me, so I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 27. I'd spent most of my teenage and young adult life thinking that it was normal to be extremely anxious and feel like I didn't fit in, like my brain was going like 20-30 miles an hour faster than it should be. I thought that was normal and that's how everybody felt, and I always had difficulties with anxiety and low mood. When I started working as a Senko, I started working with young people with ADHD as well. I did a lot of forms, so they're called Connors questionnaires in the UK. I think they do use them in other countries as well, and they're used to identify ADHD symptoms in children. And I was doing some of these, and I was like, oh, okay, some of this is ringing true. Now, I was fortunate enough to be referred to Psychiatry UK through Right to Choose before the wait list went bonkers during COVID. A lot more people, when they were working from home and they had that structure of work taken away, they were noticing a lot more neurodivergence in themselves, I think. And now the wait list to be diagnosed with the company that did mine, it was NHS, it wasn't private, but they do private diagnosis, is about 18 months. And then the wait to get medication, because you have to go through a titration with medication, is about another 18 months.
That's crazy.
At least. So people are getting diagnosed and people are like, oh, I finally understand, like, this is why I've been struggling. But then they can't get medication that might help them, because quite often when you're an adult and you've got to the stage where you're seeking a diagnosis, it's usually for a reason. Like, I found the medication really helped me. I'm not taking it at the moment, and it is a struggle and it is more difficult. But I just think then I was so lucky that I didn't have to wait. But there is a huge shortage in diagnosing, and in the young people sector, so children and young people, it's even worse. So I do ADHD and autism referrals, not at the moment because the school I work now, the children had to have a diagnosis of autism to be able to attend. So, and the school that I was in previously, I worked with young people with social, emotional, mental health difficulties, and quite often they were undiagnosed neurodivergent as well. Some of them were diagnosed, and to do a referral for an autism assessment or an ADHD assessment for young people, even just to refer them to CAMS, which is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, there's so many different forms to fill in, there's so much evidence you have to give, and sometimes they don't even let school professionals do the referral. So in Leicestershire, you have to be referred by a GP, but the GP only sees that child for like a 10-minute snapshot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the young people, they won't go to the GP.
Well, a lot of children don't know how to express how they're feeling or anything like that in a 10-minute session. Like, it takes more than that to get a child to actually figure out what's going on in their head. Like, I mean,
a teenager isn't going to say it.
No,
they're not going to say it. We're much more likely to see it at school. Parents are the people who most likely see it. Parents would say, like, well, they're getting home and they're just exploding. You wouldn't believe what they're like at home. And I'm like, no, we believe you.
Yeah,
we believe you. And what they're doing at school is masking. They will explode in the place that they feel safest and most comfortable. What we need to do as educators, though, is not try to get them. We want to decrease masking as much as possible, but there is an extent. Yeah, there is to an extent that everyone masks in certain situations, and learning to adapt to certain situations is part of growing up and developing those social skills. And we don't want them to be distressed at school, but we're trying to create that safe space, create that environment where if we can see it a little bit more, it's not necessarily a negative thing. So sometimes people panic and they're like, oh my goodness, they're suddenly starting to, like, they've shouted at a teacher and stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, we're trained to deal with that though, and they've been comfortable enough to shout and say that they are not pleased about something, or that they are pleased about something and this could have been done differently, for example. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing.
Yeah, well, it's like, I mean, this is a bit different because we're not children, but it's like I mentioned to you the other day with me and Grant, like we were bickering, like hard bickering, non-stop bickering, and I talked to Mel and I was like, this is just like our process, because we both feel comfortable enough to bicker with each other. Like, we don't feel like we have to mask our thoughts, and we don't feel like we have to hide that from each other. We are comfortable to just disagree, bicker it out, and trust that at the end of the day, the other person will listen and receive it.
Yeah, and all relationships are different, but me and my partner, we also bicker. We also disagree. We're also both very stubborn. So I think that does come into it.
Yeah.
And we bicker less with other people when we're on our own compared to when we're with other people. I don't know if that's a bit of the social anxiety stuff coming out and things like that.
Grant
But
and I do as well.
yeah,
I think, I don't know, it's strange. Like, masking sometimes presents in such strange ways. And in kids, it would be even harder because, especially if you're seeing them mask all the time. Like, I know that I masked a lot in school. And so, how do they know what I look like when I'm not masking? Because the mask just becomes the normal.
yeah. So I'm fortunate enough to have done a few experiences with young people that I work with, things like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, even just school trips and stuff like that. That can be where you see a bit more of them, and it is wonderful to see. I'm lucky enough to work in a small school where you get to know the young people extremely well.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that they're not masking, because it's their survival mechanism. And I'd say that a lot of teachers and educators, we're masking as well, because, and whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed neurodivergence, or whether it's just, I like teaching because it's almost like a performance. So it's not a performance in that I have to stand up and sing or anything like that, but I can put on my teacher persona. Sometimes I might sing. I can put on my teacher hat. And I teach, and I'm special needs coordinator, so I have my teacher hat, and then I have my Senko hat, and then I have my pastoral hat, and my talking to parents hat, and then my talking to professionals. So it's all these different hats, but there's also all these different masks. And
yeah. And sometimes not all masks are harmful. Like, sometimes it is just understanding that to talk to different people, you show a different side of yourself. But, like, when it's still yourself, that's okay. And there's always going to be a bit of, like, I don't know, like, I can't say this because I'm at work. Like, in Australia, we swear a lot. People don't as much at work. Okay, it depends on where you work. Some places do. I used to work with a couple of people who would drop the C-bomb left, right, and centre. But it's all about knowing your environment and knowing that it's okay to do that. But I wouldn't say that, like, restricting swearing is necessarily masking. It's just putting different side of yourself forward. So it's very complex, and, like, it would be so hard to tell when someone is hiding themselves. And
so yeah, I mean, I when I worked in a more behavioural type setting, a lot of the young people swore a lot. And you kind of had to pick your battles with it, because that was the way that they communicated.
Yeah.
And you kind of just model it back, like, rather than telling them off for dropping the F-bomb, just go, oh, do you mean oh fudge? Oh fudge, oh bother, right? And make a bit of a joke about it. Humour is the best thing.
Bother.
Oh,
we
bother.
are so English here.
Oh, sugar lumps.
An English gentleman would never say such things.
Mm-hmm. And the kids start to pick it up, and they start to go, I said fudge. Oh, did you? Did you say fudge now?
Oh, fudging hell.
Yeah.
I did pull up some statistics just to give a bit of context around things. So globally, 1 in 6 people live with disability. That includes all types, not just hidden. And it's estimated that up to 80% of those people are living with a non-visible disability. So across the world, according to Google, so if these numbers are wrong, it's Google's fault. But that's over 1 billion people. So that is a hell of a lot of people. And I would say that the number is likely to be higher because, especially in a lot of the developing world, there wouldn't be the same capacity to diagnose and treat and everything else for a lot of hidden disabilities. So what I did want to steer into from here, what would you say are the benefits of diagnosis from your point of view?
And I've talked a lot about medication because it's one that is a forefront of everyone's conversations in the UK, but access to certain benefits,
like joining your school, like you have to be diagnosed autistic to go there.
And also protected characteristics wise, the support you should get in a workplace. and the understanding that you should get in a workplace, the support to get into work, to get into education. I know that we have DLA for students. No, we don't have DLA for students. We have DLA for children. We have DSA for students, Disabled Students Allowance. And that can help people get access to laptops and software and things like that. But it's not just for that. There's all sorts of different things it can be used for. DLA is slightly different. It's Disabled Living Allowance. And that is for caregivers of children with a disability. Also very difficult to get. But you don't need a diagnosis to get DSA, DLA, but it really helps, because a lot of the time when you're being assessed, not so much with DSA, but with DLA and personal independence payment, which is the adult one, I'm not going to slag off our medical professionals. This isn't what I'm aiming to do, but sometimes the nuances of someone's difficulties can get lost in that conversation with the person that's assessing them for benefits.
Yes.
Whereas if you say, I'm autistic,
it's cut and dry. This is the support. Yeah.
Well, I was trying to describe, I have difficulties of social communication, sensory sensitivities, and associated anxiety. They might go, nope, and switch off.
So I guess, like, for me, like the way that you just described it, you know, social anxiety, sensory sensitivity, and associated anxiety, because that is one thing I have been diagnosed with, anxiety. That would be how I would describe it, because I don't have an overarching label. Mm-hmm. And that, I could see how that could be a hindrance if I was seeking help later on. I guess it's just, for me, it's more about, like, at what point to seek the help. Yeah. One of the things I get anxious about is money. So it's a bit of a catch-22. Money is something that makes me anxious. So
that's the thing, we are lucky.
Let's hoard the money.
We are lucky to have the NHS in the UK. I might just fly over and borrow some NHS. That is fraud. If you don't live there.
I'm a British citizen.
You don't live in the UK. You're not paying taxes into the UK.
I do not pay taxes.
But there are lots of people.
I do in Australia. I just want to clarify that for the ATO.
I do not pay taxes.
I pay Australian taxes, I promise.
You can use some of my taxpayer money for it.
No, I won't really. It would be more expensive to fly over and use the NHS.
But yeah, I think that I mean, people are becoming more open about the hidden. I'm very open about my diagnosis at work, both with students and colleagues and parents, and the kids will make jokes, because the kids are becoming more and more open about their own difficulties, like, oh, is that a bit of tism? And I'm like, oh yeah, it might have been.
I love that. You've said that to me. Yes. Is that a bit of the tism?
Bit of the tism. And I love that they're saying things about it, and that they're being more open about it and
I think the thing is as well, like, everyone probably does have a touch of the tism, because it is a spectrum. We are all going to have parts of us that fall onto it somewhere. Like, even if, like, you are on the far end of the scale, there's going to be things, and it's about just understanding where you may potentially need support. Mm-hmm. So, like, I've heard it said a lot, and you probably hear it as well. I've heard a lot of people say things like, everyone has ADHD nowadays.
No.
You don't hear it?
Okay. No, I do hear it. I was going to say,
like, is that just an Australian?
And I even disagree with what you said about everyone being on the spectrum, because not everyone is.
I feel like it depends how broad you see the spectrum. So I see the spectrum as basically a line that everyone is on. Some people are on this end, which is like none of the tism, and this is the far end, and everyone is on it somewhere.
I think because I do see autism as a spectrum, but the way that I think about it, and the way I think about a lot of disabilities, is not necessarily functioning. I think that leans towards a more functioning type of label. I do it more with support needs, because then you can do it in different areas. So you have some people who are, or will go into autism. We'll have some people who are autistic who aren't able to work full time, might use a communication device instead of using verbal speech. They might have support needs in terms of their personal care or their communication. And then you might have someone else who is autistic who communicates verbally and can hold down a part-time job, but they have severe social anxiety. That means that other than their job, they don't leave the house. I would say that actually their support needs are both high.
Yeah. But very different.
Very, very different. So I think that's why we go into invisible and hidden disabilities. If you label someone as high functioning, low functioning, you're kind of missing out a whole bit under the surface. Because I work with amazing autistic young people, and they don't look autistic, they don't act autistic, they still struggle.
Yeah, it's that the struggles are hidden, which is the whole point of it being a hidden disability. Well, I mean, often hidden. But I mean, circling back to the phrase, like, everyone has ADHD nowadays, I do want to clarify, I don't agree with the phrase. I just hear it a lot.
Yeah.
And I've
Thanks,
also
boomers.
Yeah, and speaking of boomers, another thing I've heard a bit, no offense, boomers, be better. But I also hear a lot of, like, these conditions didn't exist back in my day, or I don't know what accent
people
that
ended
was.
up mentally unwell quite often,
Yeah,
or labelled as all sorts of...
Or institutionalized, which is a huge thing back in the day. And not only is it completely wrong to say, oh, everyone has ADHD nowadays. No, there's a lot of people currently getting diagnosed because there is now a greater understanding. And so there are a lot of people who probably should have been diagnosed back when they were younger, who are only able to now. Like, you're getting diagnosed when you're, 27, I think you said? Yeah. And so you are seeking that help at 27 rather than 7, because back when you were 7, it wasn't out there. Like, it was out there, but only
and I think as well, the getting a diagnosis as a girl, like as a female, someone assigned female at birth especially, you're like... ADHD and autism do more commonly present differently in girls. It's that internal hyperactivity.
Yeah, it's very, very different, and yet the diagnosis for a long time was based around male symptoms, and so it's like, oh, these girls are fine because they're not showing those signs, but it's actually just completely different signs, and that's something that we've only started to understand recently. And so that's why there is a bit of a surge of people being diagnosed. It doesn't mean people aren't benefiting from being diagnosed. I have a friend who has just recently been diagnosed with ADHD, like within the last few months. And she started on medication and has noticed such a drastic improvement. Like, she was hardcore burning out and struggling, and like her mental health was struggling so much. She was like potentially leading towards other mental health difficulties because she was struggling to manage her ADHD that she didn't know she had.
Yeah.
And now she's got a diagnosis, she's got medication, she's got support, she's got understanding. Sometimes having a label can just help you to internally go, oh, this is fine, this is part of my ADHD, rather than just going, oh my God, this is not okay. And yeah, she's had a great improvement to her life. So even though she's only just been diagnosed, it doesn't mean that it wasn't always the case for her. She was just masking and spending all that energy, and it was just when, there comes a tipping point, whether it's when life gets really busy or just a build-up of years and years of masking. But there comes a point where you either burn out, or you go and get a diagnosis, or you go and get some support to help.
Yeah, and some people, like with ADHD in particular, they end up like inadvertently self-medicating as well sometimes. So we spoke about how I don't get woken up by caffeine and things like that. So I drink a lot of caffeine at the moment because I'm not on my ADHD medication. I know that it's a form of self-medication.
See, I didn't know that, but I also drink a lot of caffeine. It doesn't have the waking up effect on me. I thought I had just drunk so much caffeine that I'd become like tolerant. Is that that's not the word. Immune to caffeine? Maybe that's the word. I can English.
But I think people, like, there's that side of it with the stimulant side of it. Another quite common one is smoking nicotine. Nicotine's also a stimulant. But yeah, a lot of people end up struggling a lot more and reaching that burnout, like my therapist called it a boom or bust cycle. So I would go boom into something, do it really, really hard, and then bust. And I would completely just have to switch off and and I got quite severe burnout at the end of my last job before I started my current job, and it's not recommended. And it wasn't completely linked to my ADHD. There was a lot of things that were going on at the same time, but I feel like it's taken about a year at least to recover from that burnout and to recognise the signs of potentially going into it again.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand as well that, like, so for example, I have diagnosed anxiety. That is different to just feeling a bit anxious. So, like, everyone gets burnout. Like, sometimes we just push ourselves too far. You can be burned out without having a mental health condition. Like, if you're feeling burnt out, you don't need to panic and rush to the doctor. You maybe just need to slow down a bit. And, like, I'm a generally anxious person. I only went and got diagnosed with anxiety because it was taking over my life. Like, I called Mel one day and I told her I had this conversation with someone who I don't know and will never see again 2 months ago, and I can't stop replaying a stupid thing I said. And I was like just freaking out, and you were like, well, stop thinking about it. I was like, I can't. Every single day I'm thinking about this stupid thing I said, even though I don't know this person, I'm never going to see them again. And you're like, babe, I think it sounds like you're anxious. Like, maybe you should go see the doctor. Like, it's not okay to feel like this for so long. So, like, I think it is important to understand the distinction between, you know, if you're feeling crappy, go see your doctor. They may not diagnose you with anything, but they may be able to give you advice. And I also think that, like, I don't think, like, a lot of hidden disabilities and mental health conditions and everything are not curable, but I think you can also reach a point where you are out of the deep trenches of it.
Yeah.
So, like, with depression, for example, like, depression isn't necessarily curable, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be on antidepressants for your whole life. You may just need some support to get out of a bad patch and be able to move forward. And then you can learn to recognize those things in yourself, and the next time it happens, maybe not get so deep down into that dark patch, because you can go and seek the help sooner.
But then there's also nothing wrong with being on antidepressants your whole life.
No,
I've been on and
isn't.
off them since I was 20.
No, but I know a lot of people who don't want to get diagnosed because they feel like that it means they're going to be on something or, like, labeled that way for their entire life. And if you want that and want that support and want that medication for your whole life and you feel like it helps you, go for it. If you feel like you just need some short-term help, get that. Like, everything is unique to everyone. Like, everyone is different, everyone's diagnosis is different, and that's why it's so complex and so vast. But the help and support that you can get doesn't have to be the same as the next person's help and support. And I like that we've had this big shift where mental illness has become much more, like, accepted and talked about, because I know a lot of people have either felt more comfortable going to get a diagnosis or will talk more openly with the people in their circle about their diagnoses because there's no longer the stigma, or at least there shouldn't be the stigma, boomers. But it's really good that people feel comfortable going to seek the support that they want to get.
Yeah.
So I did want to touch on some of the good things that are coming from it. We just touched on the fact that, you know, socially we are becoming more accepting humans. Yay for us.
Yay.
But
generally, don't go into the quagmires of the internet.
Yes, we are talking about this one issue. But also, like, improvement isn't necessarily the same as perfection. There are always improvements to make, but yay us for coming as far as we have. But I want to talk about some of the things that are now in place and becoming more normalized in society that can support people with hidden disabilities, and you may not even realize it. So I think that this is going to spark a bit of debate between me and Mel, which I'm quite excited about.
Oh.
But I want to talk about remote work.
Okay. I am not against remote work. I can't do it.
Mel has been here for a couple of weeks and has shared a few opinions on remote work.
No, I'm not against remote work. I can't do it myself. Like, even when I'm given the opportunity to, I can occasionally work from home, very occasionally. If I have my workplace is amazing, so if I have a doctor's appointment in the morning, I work an hour away from where I live, so I'll go to my doctor's appointment. I'll quite often remote work before that and then go into school. I can't remote work, so I think I'm maybe a little bit envious, because I really struggle with it. I really struggle with the motivation, with having that lack of routine. It's part of why I became a teacher. My life is timetabled. But
That's true. You are a big timetable person.
I heard of a few people, and it's more people that you hear about through other people, and you see the stories in like the media.
I've seen a few
people
shitty
going
stories,
to
yeah.
Barbados and working from home, and people
Yeah.
doing like 2 or 3 remote jobs. And I think what frustrates me about it is that a lot more people are able to work from home, but I think you should be able to still be the same amount contactable.
Yes. No, I agree
And
with
when you
that.
can't get in touch with people, not in a school, but say other professionals who are working from home, and you can't get in touch, I'm not saying they should be at your beck and call, but it can just be a bit frustrating. And if you call up the company, like, well, that person's working from home today, I'm not sure about it. Well, why are they still not as contactable in times where they're not in meetings or anything like that?
Yeah. No, I do completely agree with all of that. So in terms of supporting people with disability, both physical and hidden, I think that working from home, it opens up the workforce to people who would otherwise may not necessarily have been able to be there. So for a lot of people, working a 9 to 5, 5 days a week is not realistic. They may need more flexible hours, or they may, like, I know a few people with physical disabilities where they may have extra appointments, they may have extra physios, extra things like that, and working remotely allows them to be able to do those appointments and still like work their hours around it. So like they may work later to accommodate the appointment, things like that. Or if someone's having, like, if someone has fibromyalgia and they have a really bad day, they don't necessarily have to go in, and they can make their environment suit them.
Yes.
So those are the benefits that I like. I do completely agree that there are people who rot the system. And I read an article that made me so angry the other day. And it's about this guy who had 3 remote jobs and he was able to like buy himself a house. And I'm like, you're bragging about literal fraud. Like, why is this newspaper, I say newspaper, it was online, but why is the news applauding this person going, look at the hustle? No, that is fraud. Like, he's working 8 hours, but only devoting X amount of time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that is bullshit. But I think that is an example of, I'm going to butcher this saying, but like, it's like a few bad apples spoil the orchard, ruin the crop.
Something like that.
Yeah. Like,
But I think
the bad apples ruin good things for everyone else.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. But I mean, I've seen in education as well now. I didn't do online teaching because of the nature of the school that I worked in. We had kids in. We worked all the way through COVID, including in the holidays, because we worked with really vulnerable children who needed a place to be safe. My partner, he works in the higher education sector, in universities, and I think that they have to record all the lectures. And while that opens it up for some students who have conditions like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, they can watch the lecture in their own time. It means that attendance in lectures, though, has gone down the pan.
Which means participation has also gone down.
Participation's gone down. People are losing jobs.
Yeah.
And then people go, well, why aren't I getting a first? Well, you haven't been to a lecture. I mean, there's always been people like that. When I was at university, there were those people who were just myths, because you'd see them in the exams. You're like, who are you? We're a quite close-knit course. Who are you?
I was that person for one of my courses.
Yeah, but you did history. Your course didn't have a huge amount of contact time. Mine did.
It didn't. And yet I still, like, one of my courses, I'm so sorry to whoever my French history lecturer was. Your course was at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. I couldn't do it. I went like twice in the whole year. I turned up to the exam. The dude didn't know who I was.
I just think you can't do study if you don't have
I didn't
the
do
study
well.
habits. Yeah, if you don't have the study habits, can't really study from home.
No, and I think it's one of those where it's a positive step forward. I think it's very much in its infancy because this is all stuff that's kind of come out as a result of COVID. And I think that there does need to be some refining, and there does need to be greater accountability for people who are working from home. And I think there needs to be greater accountability to companies too for setting people up correctly. So like my work has provided me with a work mobile and work laptop. That means that I'm very reachable. There's no reason why I shouldn't be answering my phone unless I'm in another meeting, or I'm on do not disturb to do work, not to play video games or whatever. There's no reason why I shouldn't be reachable. And also I stay signed into Microsoft Teams so people can see that I'm available and active, because you drop to yellow if you aren't actually doing work. And I like doing that because I do like being able to work from home, but I'm also slightly paranoid about people thinking I'm not doing enough. So I like it being very visible that I'm doing my work. I find that I send more emails when I'm working from home just to be like, I am here.
Yeah, to be fair, I do that as well.
Yeah. And it's one of those, I think that it needs refining, because I did notice, so my previous job that I wasn't at for very long, I was told it was a hybrid position, so I was working 1 day a week from home, which was fine, but I definitely was not provided a work phone, but I also was not provided a work laptop. So not only was that a huge security issue, because I was accessing like things that should be secure from my personal computer, but also it made me very unreachable at times because my personal laptop was a piece of shit and I couldn't download more stuff to it without it slowing the thing down so much that it was basically not running.
Yeah.
So I couldn't download Teams, and no one really used it at that company anyway, so it's not like anyone was trying to message me and couldn't get through. And I did download the Teams app on my phone to compensate, but I was far less reachable then. So I think then the onus falls onto the company to give people all the tools that they need. So then there's no excuses. You should be working. And yeah, I know. It's one of those things where I really hope that the bad apples don't ruin it, because working in the disability support sector for so long, one of the big things that we did was try and support people into work. And a lot of the time, having that flexibility or not having to go into the office 5 days a week can be everything.
Yeah.
And especially that when a lot of corporate environments are not great, like you want to be able to have that time where you're not constantly having to be like on, like socially on, I mean, and you can just do your work and not have to worry about all the rest of it.
I think that's where the school environment's a little bit different. I'm not saying that toxicity doesn't exist in the school environment, because it certainly does. But for me, I don't know how I'd feel if I was teaching full time. Like if I had a full teaching timetable, I'd teach a day and a half a week, and then I'm Senko for the rest of it. I'm lucky enough to have an office. It's a shared office, but I'm lucky enough to have an office, and there's also space in the school that if I need to go somewhere quiet, usually I can find somewhere. And I'm very lucky that my managers are flexible. And like I said, I don't know how much I would struggle if I was teaching full time again, but I do really struggle to work from home.
Yeah, and this thing, I think it's about people admitting as well, like if working from home doesn't work for you, own up to that as well, because like there's lots of benefits, like no commute time, and I find it cheap because I always forget to take lunch to work, so if I'm here, my food is also here. But if I wasn't able to do my work, then you're not doing what you're being paid for, so you got to be honest with yourself. And I think there's a lot of jobs as well where obviously working from home is not a possibility. I do also think that jobs where you cannot be remote there should be a benefit, there should be financial compensation or something like that. Now that so many jobs have work from home, if you're not offering that, then there should be more money in it, because we are also noticing that there's like a drop in the amount of people who are going for trades or going for vocational work because they want to be able to have that remote option, which isn't available in a lot of jobs, and we need those jobs.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, I work in marketing. You don't need marketing, like but we need trades. We need people who are going to be out and about and doing like.
The amount of teachers that are leaving and going work in the civil service where they can work like 90% remotely
that's the thing.
Astonishing.
Like if you're working in the office all the time, you should be paid well. Like now that we're in a climate where a lot of people are working from home, and like for a while in Australia, it was more financially good to work from home because when it came to tax time, you could claim back things like some of your electric and stuff like that. So rather than paying to commute in, you were able to claim some of your household stuff. They've changed it now because they realized that that was bullshit. But I don't know, there needs to be perks both ways. But in terms of like the conversation of people with disability, it is a big positive step.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really hope we don't ruin it. Like I hope that someone clever, like someone smarter than me, comes up with a way to make it work and to make it fair for everyone, because it is one of the few good things to come out of COVID, and it could benefit a lot of people if we don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to chat about, which I know you're a big advocate of, is the Sunflower Project.
Yes, I have a sunflower lanyard somewhere. It's in my bag somewhere here.
I was going to say, you have lots of bags and they are all full of stuff.
So I don't use the sunflower lanyard at like the shops and stuff. I usually attach my loop earplugs to it, but I lost those on the flight to Dubai.
Oh no.
Which was very upsetting at the start of a 24-hour journey to Japan. But I tend to use it in the airport because I don't necessarily get anxious about flying anymore, but I do get anxious about traveling and waiting. It's all the waiting queues and not knowing which way to go and just the busyness of the airport. It's just a bit of a sensory nightmare for me. So I was always advocating for my young people and parents to get the sunflower lanyard when they go traveling. And then I was like, why don't I get one for myself?
Yeah.
And it is so helpful. Like, I think sometimes people joke about it and like, oh, it's just a way to get quick a few queues and stuff like that. But the first time I used it, I was doing a short haul flight. I was going to Spain, and I was used to arriving on after every holiday and feeling physically sick and just so burnt out and anxious all the way through traveling and like losing base the first 2 days of my holiday because I was so anxious and panicky. And that didn't happen because
there was the
there's support available.
Yeah.
And people were just so kind and accommodating. This is at Birmingham Airport. I found the same when we travelled across at this time. And it is, we've used it, so I've used it in a few countries now. And the only place that they didn't have sunflower lines, there was one in Dubai. I don't think it was overly widely recognised in Japan.
So I also think, I think it's more widely recognised in the UK than Australia. So a quick overview for if anyone doesn't know about this product. The sunflower lanyards, badges, and all the rest of it, they are so that someone with a hidden disability can be more visible. So it's a green background with a sunflower on it, and you can wear it, and then when you are out in a public space, it is a sign to other people that you may find aspects of the environment challenging, you may need some support, and it's just that way of making the invisible more visible. There is also a white background with a sunflower on it, which is basically if you are someone who is a safe space for someone who is wearing a sunflower lanyard to come to and seek that support. So you can show yourself as ally is the wrong word, but you can show yourself as a safe space.
Yeah.
I have one of those.
Oh, see, I haven't seen those. I haven't seen those in the UK.
I think that's a newer thing.
Yeah.
But we had a big thing about the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower at work, and there was basically if you need a lanyard, we will provide one, but also if you want to be recognised as a safe space, this is the other one. So I was like, I'll go with that.
So for a while in the UK, the sunflower lanyard got not a negative rap, but when masking was more mandatory in public during COVID, and
hang on, do you mean masking?
Masking, yeah, okay. Wearing a protective mask.
Yeah.
A lot of people got sunflower lanyards for exemptions from wearing masks. Yeah. Now, probably a proportion of those people had difficulties with wearing a mask for whatever reason, whether it was anxiety, whether it was a sensory sensitivity or anything like that. Completely fair. But there were definitely some people who they either didn't believe in COVID or didn't believe that it was that
they saw this as an escape route to not wear a mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they used the sunflower lanyard to not and you can't make assumptions based on people. You can make assumptions based on what they say and what they put out, and this is what these people are putting out, usually on social media.
Yeah.
So I'm not making assumptions about anyone's anxieties or sensitivities or needs. This is what people were saying.
Yes.
Like, they were saying this themselves. And that I have a problem with. And it's just about come back now, because masking hasn't been mandatory for a long time, and that's kind of gone.
Yeah, and I did definitely hear I heard a few people saying, oh yeah, I'm going to apply for an exemption, because I heard a lot of people basically admitting that they were going to falsifyingly claim that they could not wear one so that they could get an exemption. Because I was working in the healthcare space at the time with people, again, with physical disabilities, and a lot of them were immunocompromised. So it was very, very important that everyone wore masks. And so we had it heavily mandated along with a lot of other PPE. And some of the staff were talking about getting these exemptions, and we're like, we don't know if we can actually allow you to work then, because fair enough if that's what you need, but like, we didn't, like, COVID came on so suddenly, we didn't have anything in place for like, if someone got an exemption but was working with an immunocompromised person, like, that person has the right to not wear a mask if they have a medical exemption, but also the client had a right to have all of their staff wear masks to protect them if they're immunocompromised. We spiraled on that for a long time. But luckily in Australia, because COVID wasn't as severe here, it didn't actually eventuate into a problem that we had to deal with, which was very, very lucky. But I definitely heard a lot of chatter amongst people saying that they were going to apply for an exemption. I don't know if they applied and didn't get it, or if they just caved into the pressure at work.
Yeah, and I think the Sunflower Project has recovered from that.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, because again, you don't want like one huge influx to ruin the whole thing, which it very well could have. And it's a fantastic thing. If you haven't read about it, again, I'll include a link in the episode description on YouTube. But it's a really, really cool project. And if you see someone out and about with a green lanyard with a sunflower on it, now you know what that means. And you know, like, if you want to go and offer help, you know, some people may welcome that. But I think a lot of it is just about being aware that that person may just need a couple of extra accommodations and maybe a bit more patience sometimes. And
so they always ask me before going on a flight, like, do you need anything before you get on, while you're on? If you need anything, just let us know, and things like that. And just knowing that someone's having that little bit of an extra, I'm here, is nice. It is nice.
Yeah.
And like, I don't really have physical disabilities. Like, I've got a couple of conditions that do cause me pain, but that's not why I wear the lanyard. That is because the lanyard is because of my anxieties and processing and things like that. Like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't use it for like a physical pain condition, but that's not what I use it for. And just the way that the airport staff ask is so inclusive and nice. It's just, yeah,
no, I love that. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much for coming on.
I know. Actually, in person.
I know. It's going to be so long till we can do this again. You have to pack tonight.
Not going to pack tomorrow. I'm not flying till 8 p.m.
Not true. Arlo will help pack. He's dropping a lot of fur today, so he's going to get fur all over your stuff.
Yeah. So we should arrive home Wednesday.
No.
I know.
Well, thanks for making the time for this. Thanks for squeezing this in. I hope it's been interesting for everyone. And if you have any questions, like if I don't know the answers, Mel might, by all means ask us. And if you disagree with anything that we've said as well, because like I've said, things are constantly evolving. We're not always going to say the right things. You're not always going to say the right things. Again, when the intent behind things is good, there's nothing wrong with educating people on something. And you can always do it in a positive way. So
absolutely, yeah.
By all means, if you disagree with anything that we've said, come and talk to us. Not in person, that would be weird, but in the comments. And I'm happy to open a dialogue about it, because I don't think everything that I say is right. And a lot of this is all of this is just my opinions and my perceptions of things. But yeah, this is a topic that we both feel very passionately about.
And I don't claim to speak for everyone in education or mental health or special educational needs or anything like that. Like, I'm learning every single day, and I've been doing this for 11 years now.
Yeah. no, and neither of us speak for, the disability community or anything like that. These are just our perceptions and how we try and, I guess, navigate the world and be inclusive. I've noticed a lot of people have some like negative connotations with the word inclusive because they feel like it's been overused. But it is truly the only word that I can think of to describe this. So if you've got an issue with the word, maybe that's your problem.
Nothing wrong with the word.
Nothing at all wrong with the word. It does get overused, but it's also a great word. So yeah, thanks for joining us. This is a bit of a heavier one, so I'll sprinkle in some more lighthearted content soon. And I'll put some lighthearted stuff, like I'll put some pictures of Arlo and stuff on the Instagram and Facebook and wherever as well. So find us on there if you want a bit of a pick me up, because this was a heavier one. But thanks
you,
everyone.
Sam.
Thank you, Mel. Bye.